Hello, I'm Simon Heseltine. I'm the VP of Audience Growth at Trader Interactive, and I'm going to be talking today about growing traffic to mature sites using your own data. So first, a little bit about me. I used to work at AOL for about 6.5 years as the Senior Director of Audience Growth, overseeing about 135 different sites. From there, I went to Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, where I mostly worked with one site. So a little bit of different ends of the spectrum there for enterprise sites. I taught SEO and online marketing at Georgetown University for about 5 years, from 2010 to 2015. And as I said, right now, I'm at Trader Interactive. And Trader Interactive this year, we actually won the Best Global In-House Team at the 2020 Global Search Awards, so we must be doing something right. I'm also one of the two folks behind WTF SEO, which most of you have probably never heard of anyway. As I mentioned, 135 different sites, but I've also worked with other sites outside of the AOL ones. And the Trader ones you see there are the Trader Interactive ones. And before you think it, no, we're not that Trader. We don't have cars. We do have commercial truck trader, equipment trader, cycle trader, RV trader, and so forth. But anyway, I am here to talk about getting more traffic to your site. So you think about your site as, something that you work on, something that you exercise, like a muscle, and a site that has been worked on, that's had all the SEO work done, that's had all different kinds of optimizations done. You may think of as a normal muscle. But if you, for example, think that you don't need to do that SEO work now, you can put it off for a while, maybe a couple more months down the road, have the devs work on something else, then you're going to end up in a situation where it just atrophies. And what's going to happen there is you're going to start to lose rankings. You're going to start to lose traffic. And again, why does something like this happen? Well, complacency could be one of those issues. You could be at the top of your game and think, okay, job done. Wipe your hands, walk away. Let that traffic keep rolling in. That's not going to happen. You could also think that, oh, there's something shiny over there, some brand new project to work on, or a new area of the business to move into, or something that Google's told you should probably be doing, but isn't necessarily core to your website. That can distract you from it. It can stop those fixes that you need to have happen to your site from being prioritized. And what's going to happen while you're not doing these things is your competition is probably going to be out there doing them. And all you need is one or two competitors to start hammering away at your market share. And again, you're in that situation where you've atrophied. But of course, it's not just your competition that can be damaging you. It can also be all those algorithm changes, all those many hundreds or thousands or 5 core changes or whatever it is that Google does throughout the course of a year. They can impact you. They don't, most of them won't, but it doesn't matter about most of them. It's about that one algorithm change that happens that does impact you, hopefully positively, but potentially negatively if you haven't been keeping on top of the things that you needed to be keeping on top of. Again, you're just going to end up with that situation where your site is going to atrophy. Well, what do you do when you're in a situation like that? Well, if you're not going to be looking after your site and you still need the traffic, you've always got SEM, you've always got pay-per-click, you've always got your Facebook ads. You can just take out that unlimited budget that you've got and just throw it at the wall. That's not going to work for most businesses. For most businesses, what you're going to have to do is actually fix those underlying problems. Make sure that you are optimizing your site where you need to be optimizing it. I'm going to give you an example now. So I'm going to walk you through what we did with RV Trader last year. as a case study. So a little bit of background. RV Trader was founded in '98. It was a print magazine, but it did also have a website, rvtraderonline.com. Because obviously, if we hadn't put the word online in there, you wouldn't have known where to find this website. In 2010, the print magazine stopped. So the entire business went online. We no longer had those magazines sitting out there in your local supermarket. And it was great that it was online because we had the word online in our URL. 2 years later, we got rid of the online. It just became rvtrader.com. Now, when I pulled the data in April of 2019, I pulled the 50,000 keywords from SEMrush and wanted to basically take stock and see where we were. We had 11,400 almost number one rankings, almost 20,900 top three rankings. That also includes the number ones. And then 33,931 top 10 rankings, again, including those in the top three. So we knew where we were from a starting place. But what about the traffic side of things? When we look at our traffic, we can see that there's not been a great deal of movement over the years. It's a little spidery. When you look at the overall traffic, when you look at our organic UVs, you can see there had been a bit of improvement in 2017, 2018, 2019, not so much. So there'd been a little bit of backsliding going on. And again, when you look at everything overall, it really was kind of just year over year baby steps. And while this is a mature site, while it's a site that's been around for a long while, baby steps wasn't going to cut it for us. So we looked at this and said, okay, 2020, we want to be our leap year. Now, obviously, it was an actual physical leap year, but we wanted our traffic to leap up to the next level. So we had to figure out, how could we do that? And the first step was what pretty much most folks' first step would be: audit what we've got. Look at the site. Look at what we had. So, of course, we used different tools, and a couple of the ones we used, Sitebold, Screaming Frog, and we looked at the things that all of you will have looked at, all the basics, the technical site issues. We looked at crawlability. Could the crawlers get everywhere on the site? We looked at the URLs. Did the structure make sense? And was there only one URL to hit each page? The answer to that was no. There were multiple URLs that were hitting the same page, showing the same content. So that had to be fixed. We had metadata issues. We weren't necessarily giving the full context of the pages to the search engines. And then just other basic site stuff, like making sure we had the right content, making sure we had the right internal linking. Again, all basic kind of stuff, but all stuff that matters. Then we started looking at competitive data. So again, we pulled this from SEMrush. I pulled in the 50,000 keywords that we were ranking for. And I did the same for our top 7 competitors. And I said, okay, what does this show? So I pulled them all together on one spreadsheet and said, okay, let's look at those things that our competitors rank for that we don't. And then figure out, why don't we? And from looking through this spreadsheet, we could see different areas for improvement. And it's not really white space. It's actually fairly dark gray space. White space would be where none of our competitors are. This is where they are and we are not. So in order to be competitive with them, we should be in these key phrases. So then we looked at the ones where, we're not on page 1. So let's say we're ranking from anywhere from 11 to 40. Why aren't we on page 1 for those terms? Do we need to be on page 1 for those terms? Are they terms that matter? And then it was a case of, what can we do to get these to page 1? And then the next set was, all right, let's look at where we rank 4 through 10. Why aren't we in the top three? Which of our competitors are in the top three? What are they doing to be in the top three that we're not doing? So that's the competitive data set. And then we started looking at our own data. One of the assumptions that we had made is that when folks are searching for an RV, that they would probably want to find an RV near them. So if you are searching in Dallas, you're going to want to find an RV in Dallas. You know, maybe with like a 20 or 50-mile range at the most. We actually went out and asked our customers, the people searching on our site, whether that was true or not. And what we got back was that the majority of folks, we asked this to RV Trader and Cycle Trader customers, would actually be willing to travel more than 2 hours to find the ideal unit that they were looking for. What that meant was that we could then change our search parameters so that we automatically did a 150-mile radius search. Now, what that meant was that we now had cities where we did not have any inventory, but now because we were doing that 150-mile radius, suddenly there was inventory that was showing in nearby cities to that city. So we could potentially rank for people searching for a location that had no actual physical inventory, but it had nearby inventory. And this met with the user intent, because the user is willing to search and travel for those units. So then, of course, we've done the audit, we've done all these, we've identified all these problems, all these issues, all these potential fixes. So the next step is actually to do it. You know, we had a backlog of JIRA tickets that, again, the developers were working on potentially some of the shiny objects. There'd be some trickle through of SEO. But we got to the point where we said, okay, we have a lot. We need this done. So what they said was, we're going to create a tiger team. That tiger team was 6 developers for 6 months. And over the course of that time, they worked on 116 JIRA tickets, just specifically on SEO. And of that, 84 of those were on the RV code base. And the RV code base is shared with Cycle and Aero, whereas we also have a commercial code base, which is the truck and equipment side. So of these tickets, 84 of them were on this side. And while they were working on that, we said, okay, we need to work on content as well. We need to make sure we're getting some unique content on the site, better content on the site, because we're a marketplace site. Our listings are being fed to us by the dealers. Those dealers are going to feed the same listings to our competitors. Same text, same pictures. We have to have something different on the pages. So we started looking and saying, okay, where can we build unique content? So we started writing 200 to 300 word SEO blurbs, but they're not really SEO blurbs. I mean, they're pieces of content for the page that provide information for the user about a particular type of vehicle, a particular model. And that is unique content that we have had built to help the users. And then we have the other side of content where we said, okay, let's build some links. So we went out and we created infographics. And, you know, those infographics have been picked up by lots of different sites, whether they're industry sites or in some cases news sites have picked them up. And that's built those links into our sites, which obviously help us. Then we get into modeling. Well, not that type of modeling, data modeling. So with data modeling, what we did was we said, okay, let's take a look at the data that we have our own data on what can we do with it. So we looked at those past year averages, those monthly changes, and said, okay, this is what we should build into our model from a seasonality perspective. We then looked at what we're doing from an SEO perspective from that audit and said, okay, if we got that content in there, if we got these technical fixes, if we got those on-page fixes, if we got that new keyword targeting, let's say we were ranking, on page 1 for those new keywords we're targeting for, what is that going to do to our site? How is that going to change our traffic? And we looked at what's the impact of SEM? If we tweak the budget up or tweak the budget down, what impact is that going to have on the traffic? What impact is a push on social going to have? And all the other channels that we have coming in. Direct traffic, if we're doing branding, how is that going to move the needle? And based on all of this, I built a model that came back and said, this is what we should hit if we do all these things in 2020. And pretty much every month was going to be a record month for that month, apart from January. So that was where we were aiming to go with everything. And of course, the next step then is actually, measure things out, see how things actually happened. So I'll start going back to the rankings that I showed at the beginning. We had all these numbers for where we were ranking. Here's where we actually ended up in July of 2020. We had a 162% increase in number 1 rankings, an 88% increase in top 3 rankings, and a 26% increase in top 10 rankings. We've actually kind of got to the point now where we can't use the regular SEMrush tool, which only provides 50,000 answers, because 50,000 keywords, because we're pretty much there already at the 50,000. But we know the work that we did definitely helped move us up. And we did, again, look at these keywords. We pulled the competitors' keywords and again reviewed where we were against them, whether we had made inroads into that dark gray space, whether we'd made any inroads into those keywords that we were trying to move up from the second page to the first page. And we then, every month, we're constantly modeling out the traffic to see how it is moving. So what I do here, this is a sheet that I fill out every day. I pull the traffic down from Adobe, from Google Analytics. We have some sites in both. And I look at where we are currently this month. What traffic have we generated this month? And it doesn't matter whether you're talking UVs or visits, as long as you remain consistent. I then look at where we were the same time last year. And by the same time, I don't necessarily mean the same date range. I mean the closest equivalent. So as you can see on here, I have the 1st to the 4th and the 3rd to the 6th of last year. And the reason for that is because I want to compare Monday through Thursday against Monday through Thursday. And we had a leap year this year, so there's a 2-day switch rather than the usual 1 day. Because we do have different levels of traffic for different days of the week. And by looking at that formula, by looking at last year's against the total for last year and multiplying it out by where we are this year, I get an idea of every day where we are trending for this month and what my projected UVs are, or my projected visits are for this month, and how that's moving against goal and how that's moving against last year. Looking at this, I can then tweak the SEM spend if I need to. I can look at where we might be failing on from an SEO perspective, or where things might be moving around from an SEO perspective. And that's where you get into all that kind of tweaking, which is that, adjust as needed. This year has been an interesting one. We've moved our SEM budget around. In fact, the first few months, our SEM budget was about 10% down on last year's SEM budget. In March, we made the decision to pull back on the SEM budget. And we're actually down about 85% in spend. Now, that might seem like a really bad decision. But let me explain why it wasn't. It's because the demand for RVs has shot up. Because, you know, COVID being an absolutely awful thing that we're having to deal with around the world, people in the US have said, okay, I can't do international travel anymore. So I want to travel within the US. What's a great way to travel within the US and be in my own social bubble? RVs. And people have been searching for RVs. You know, it is the summer of the RV. Everywhere says it's the summer of the RV. It's on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that it's the summer of the RV. So what has that meant for the actual traffic? It has leapt up far beyond where we were thinking it would go for our goals. And I hear you saying, well, so you're just saying that you need to have a global pandemic in order to increase traffic? No. What I'm saying here is, yes, there was this global pandemic. Yes, there was an increase in the number of folks searching for RVs. But because of all the work we did last year, because we improved our rankings for our keywords that we wanted to be ranking for, we got more of that increase than our competitors did. We heard some of our competitors saying they got like a 20, 30% increase in May, in June, July. In July, we had, I think it was a 63, 64% increase, way above what the rest of the market was getting in our industry. And that was because we had done that prep work. We had spent all that time building up our site, optimizing it, getting it to where we wanted to get it. And of course, we're not done yet. There's still more to do. But if we hadn't have done that work, this curve would not have been as high as it is. So to wrap it all up, you know, if you procrastinate around your SEO, around optimizing your SEM, your site traffic is going to atrophy. Look at your own data. See what it's telling you. And by your own data, I also mean talking to your customers. Look at your competitors' data. Use different tool sets. You have your own analytics. You know how you are trending in your analytics. Look at tools and see if they trend the same way that your analytics trends. If it does, then you can use that tool to look at the trending for your competitors. And the last one on here, it's the old Cub Scout Girl Guide motto: be prepared. If you're prepared, if you proactively work on your site, getting things done that needed to be done, things that you have put off, in normal situations, that's absolutely going to help you to grow. You know, our traffic was above goal pre-COVID. But in an abnormal situation like we've encountered this year, we grew way more than our competitors did. And that's because we were prepared. We were ready for this through the use of all that data and through actively working on our sites. Thank you. And now Live Me will take questions.